Hello, my name is Sahir Patel, and in this paper slideshow, it will illustrate how catastrophic the removal of a single species from an ecosystem can be. In this case, I will describe the hypothetical future of if the bighorn sheep was removed from the Grand Canyon National Park. So, the Grand Canyon National Park is a significant national park that brings in millions of visitors each year. Grand Canyon National Park is located in Arizona and has played a fundamental part in the wilderness conservation since it was established in February 26, 1919. The bighorn sheep. The color of the bighorn sheep are gray/brown to dark brown in color with their white patches on their rump, muzzle, and back of the legs. The size and weight of the bighorn sheep vary, are typically to 5 to 6 feet tall. The bighorn sheep are herbivores. The habitat of the bighorn sheep, they live in mountainous regions of North America. Their steep mountainous habitats with ledges sometimes only 2 inches wide provide cover from predators such as coyotes, golden eagles, mountain lions, bears, and Canada lynx. Food chains. Bighorn sheep are primary consumers. This means they eat producers, are eaten by secondary consumers. This means the sudden disappearance of bighorn sheep will lead to a break in the food chain. This will cause 2 things. The plants that the bighorn sheep ate will increase in numbers. The secondary and up consumers that eat the bighorn sheep will suffer a decrease in numbers. Pre-bighorn sheep extinction food chains would be shrubs, bighorn sheep, coyotes, or grass, bighorn sheep, mountain lions. Immediately after the bighorn sheep extinction, the food chains would be shrubs, blank, coyotes, or grass, blank, mountain lions. Many years post bighorn sheep extinction, where other animals would have taken up the niche that the bighorn sheep used to occupy, the food chains would be shrubs, Dall sheep, coyotes, grass, snow sheep, mountain lions. The middle can vary. What would happen to the food web? So pre-bighorn sheep extinction food web, just a normal food web with the producers at the bottom, the primary consumers at the top, and the secondary consumers at the top too. Food web right after the bighorn sheep extinction. This is the food web right after the bighorn sheep suddenly dies out. It has a big hole in it, and everything in the food web is being affected by its loss. The producers now have less predators, the primary consumers now have less competition, and the secondary consumers have less prey. What would happen to the food web part 2? Food web many years after bighorn sheep extinction. This is the food web many years after all the deer died out. The bighorn sheep have been replaced by hares, an animal that has a similar niche to them. Everything has returned to normal. The producers have enough predators, the primary producers have enough competition, and the secondary and up consumers have enough prey. What would happen to the bighorn sheep? What would happen to the bighorn sheep? What would happen to the bighorn sheep relationships with other organisms in its ecosystem? The bighorn sheep has many different relationships with other organisms in its ecosystem. The sudden extinction of the bighorn sheep will impact all of the organisms. Relationship 1. Predation. Bighorn sheep eat plants. Since the bighorn sheep will be gone, the plant population will increase in the short term till the population of the primary consumer rise to meet it. Relationship 2. Competition. The bighorn sheep compete with other primary consumers for producers. With the bighorn sheep gone, the other primary consumers will be able to have access to more plants, thus increasing their numbers. Relationship 3. Mutualism. Bighorn sheep form a symbiotic relationship with birds. Birds eat the ticks off the bighorn sheep, thus getting food, and the bighorn sheep get clean and tick-free. With the bighorn sheep gone, these organisms will have to adapt by either finding a new food source or another organism that wants to engage in this form of symbiotic relationship. Relationship 4. Commensalism. A few innocuous insects live on the bighorn sheep. These insects don't impact the bighorn sheep. With the bighorn sheep gone, these organisms would not be hit too hard because they could always find another animal to make this deal with. Relationship 5. Parasitism. Ticks live on the bighorn sheep and steal their resources. This is an example of parasitism where the bighorn sheep is the host and the tick is the parasite. With the bighorn sheep gone, ticks would not be hit too hard because they could always find another host to leech off of. What would happen to the cycling of matter throughout the ecosystem? So the effect of the water cycle on the water cycle. The extinction of the bighorn sheep would have a small effect on the water cycle. Since the bighorn sheep used to hold water in and not let it evaporate, there would be slightly more water in the air/rain than usual. However, this effect will be minuscule and will soon be covered up as a new organism take over the bighorn sheep niche and return the ecosystem back to normal. The effect on the carbon cycle. The extinction of the bighorn sheep will have a small effect on the carbon cycle. Since the bighorn sheep both exhale carbon and eat plants that inhale carbon, these plants' numbers will go up. There will be less carbon dioxide in the ecosystem. However, this effect will be minuscule and soon be erased by the organisms that take over the bighorn sheep niche and fix the ecosystem. Effect on the nitrogen cycle. The extinction of the bighorn sheep would not have a big effect on the nitrogen cycle. Since the bighorn sheep will all die at once, there will be a large influx of good nitrogen in the soil. However, this will be counteracted by the rising population of plants, which would need more good nitrogen. Since these two cancel each other out, the organisms that come after the bighorn sheep will likely have about the same levels of nitrogen in the soil and air until another large event like this happens. Graphs. So my first graph. This is a graph of producers and primary consumers after the bighorn sheep's extinction. The bighorn sheep is the purple, and it very quickly goes down to zero. So as the bighorn sheep population goes down, the plant population surges. With that, other primary consumers' populations also surges. So the plant population kind of goes back to what it was normally and the other primary consumer population starts to dip. It does have a higher carrying capacity because the bighorn sheep are dead. For graph 2, this is a graph of the secondary consumers. So after the bighorn sheep extinction, so the bighorn sheep goes down to zero. The secondary consumers are doing good, but they crash because they're losing gears to eat. But they come back up slowly as the other primary consumers are coming up, and so they're coming up on the same tread. These are my sources. The end. Thank you for watching.